Chapter 6. The Demon King on his throne. Pastor Darrell. They came from a nearby city with nothing but the clothes on their backs. A pastor and his family came to us for help. We fed them dinner and put them up in a hotel for a while. We gave them employment with our company and then helped them to rent a house several blocks from our own. I took out all of the spare things I had around the house, pots and pans, quilts, blankets, pillows, a roll-away bed, a dresser, etc. I gave them everything I could think of to make their transition easy. Whenever I shopped, I bought odds and ends and took them to the wife and kids. I could not for the sake of me understand what had happened to cause them to have nothing upon arrival to our city. The wife Charlene was very nervous and jumpy, more so than anyone I had ever seen. She had this scared laugh that frequently poured out along with her fear. They had 4 girls and they were sweet but just as frightened as their mom. I couldn't figure out where the fear was coming from. The family seemed to be adjusting well to their new home and all went to church together and attended meetings and conferences together occasionally. The girls got along well with my 2 sons, and they came over often. I would babysit sometimes so their mom and dad could have some time alone. One evening, we heard screaming coming down the street, and then some people were beating on my front door. It was Charlene and the girls. Charlene's clothes were ripped up and they were hysterical. We let them in and tried to calm the tears and get some reasoning out of them. Charlene could just cry and tremblingly say, ugh, oh, ugh, repeatedly with a sad sigh and so much sorrow. Where's Darrell? We asked. Looking at each other, they said, at home, he's been drinking again. Every time he drinks, he changes and gets evil. Then he chases us out of the house. He sits up on the back of the sofa or whatever seat he can find and just glares at us and curses and swears until he gets violent and we have to run away from him. He grabbed me and tried to hold me down while I was screaming, said Charlene. He said he was going to kill me and finally get rid of me and his burden. He said he never wanted me anyway. So while I was fighting to get away, he ripped my clothes. She and the girls started to sob again as we tried to comfort them. Charlene began again to speak through her tears. That is why we don't have anything. He tears it all up when he gets drunk. Cursing and screaming, he kicked in the dresser you gave us and threw the dishes and broke them all. He started cutting up the blankets and saying how we would be next when he finished. Then from Charlene came that disturbing laugh that she had mixed in with the tears. I realized then that it was not actually a sound of laughter, but a sound of fear that came from deep within her soul. Well, by then I was no doubt a little upset about him tearing up my stuff, and we decided to go over to the house and talk with Darrell. Charlene and the girls stayed at my house, and we went to see just what was actually going on. The front door was open and the sun was going down, so it was getting dark inside of the house. You could still see a little light inside of the house. We approached the doorway and looked inside the front room. It was a mess. Stuff was strewn everywhere. Several bottles of Coke 45 and beer cans were visible around the room. Broken glass was on the floor, glass smashed beyond recognition. A frightening chill went up my spine, and I stopped at the entrance. Sitting in the corner, crouched up on the back of a large chair, sat Darrell, glaring at us like a cat in the dark. His physical appearance had changed, and he looked like a demonic being sitting on a throne. Some sort of spirit had definitely taken over his body, and he was a different being. We attempted to talk with him and to get him to step into the light. He refused to move, just sat there looking at us. No amount of coaxing could get him to come out, and we felt not to go inside. Charlene, too, had warned us not to go inside for fear of his mindset. We closed the front door of the house on Darrell. We left and went back to see about his family and to get them comfortable. They were so frightened that we decided to keep them with us for their well-being. I cooked them dinner and they fell asleep early from exhaustion. According to Charlene, he had begun his drinking spree several days earlier and had progressed up to that point in his binge. Facts began to come out about this having happened repeatedly, along with him disappearing for days with no explanation as to his whereabouts. The next day following the episode, we went to the house and he was gone. After 2 days, Charlene and the girls went back to their house to straighten out and salvage what they could. They kept in close contact with us over the next few days and had no word from Darrell for over a week. The following Friday, we walked into their house. He walked into their house dirty, but fairly sober, and apologized for what he had done. He cried and asked Charlene and the girls for forgiveness. They all forgave him because they loved him. After their reconciliation, he called us on the telephone. Darrell requested prayer, and he apologized also to us for what he had done to his family. He claimed he had gotten really depressed about his financial situation, and he knew that he should not have turned to the alcohol for consolation. He had been an alcoholic before becoming a minister. All was well for a short time. Then several weeks later, there came Charlene and the girls running down my street to the front door again, screaming and banging for help. This time I did not go to their house to see about Darrell. He had left anyway and fled to his normal hangout. By then we had discovered that when he fled from home, he went to a rundown hotel out on Imperial Avenue and Prairie Boulevard in Inglewood. He had a prostitute girlfriend that he hung out with in that vicinity. Several times we picked him up from that location and brought him back home. We got him cleaned up, working, and back on his feet. He was a skilled engineer and made good money, but that was not enough for him. He battled with his own demons that he had entertained often. Charlene finally had enough and left our city and went home to her family. She left with nothing like she came. Darrell eventually followed her, and she took him back several times after all this. Several churches, pastors, and congregation members tried to help him, but he refused all sound word. He bowed down to those demons and began living on the streets. He would sit on the corner in dirty clothing, drinking and hanging out with the prostitutes. He had become one of the homeless. Charlene eventually divorced him and moved on to a more peaceful life. The girls often tried to help their father and get him off the streets, but he would go right back. We have passed him many times, and he would wave. We would wave back. I don't know what happened to him, but we loved him. Proverbs 20:1 says, wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. Isaiah 5:20 says, woe unto them that call evil good, and good evil, that put darkness for light, and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet, and sweet for bitter. Isaiah 5:21, woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes, and prudent in their own sight. Isaiah 5:22, woe unto them that are mighty to drink wine, and men of strength to mingle strong drink. Isaiah 5:23, which justify the wicked for reward, and take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. Isaiah 5:24, therefore as the fire devoureth the stubble, and the flame consumeth the chaff, so their roots shall be as rottenness, and their blossoms shall go up as dust, because they have cast away the law of the Lord of hosts, and despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. Isaiah 28:7 says, but they also have erred through wine, and through strong drink are out of the way. The priest and the prophet have erred through strong drink. They are swallowed up of wine. They are out of the way through strong drink. They err in vision. They stumble in judgment. Isaiah 28:8 says, for all tables are full of vomit and filthiness, so that there is no place clean. Ephesians 5:18, and be not drunk with wine, wherein is excess, but be filled with the Spirit. The alcohol king sat on the throne of his heart.